designers look to nature as a solution for flood-prone cities. UN agency chiefs seek long-term solutions for Africa's drought-prone Horn region. And from a refugee camp to the runway, a hijab-wearing model breaks barriers. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, the U.S. military says it has carried out airstrikes in Somalia against the Somali-based terrorist group Al-Shabaab, killing 6 militants. According to the U.S. military's Africa Command, the airstrikes were launched at 2:15 a.m. local time. Al-Shabaab has lost control of most of Somalia's cities and towns, but it retains a strong presence in parts of the south and center of the country. The African Union mission in Somalia is mandated to support transitional government structures, implement a national security plan, train the Somali security forces, and to assist in creating a secure environment for the delivery of humanitarian aid. At an African Security Forum on Tuesday, retired U.S. General Caterham, a former commander of AFRICOM, says AMISOM is a great model for maintaining peace in troubled countries.
To be sure. So I think when we look at Somalia, one of the questions is to ask ourselves is, if AMISOM didn't exist, if the United States and other partners had not been supportive of AMISOM and others, where would Somalia be? And I think, well, that's a bit of an imprecise science. It's hard to imagine that Somalia would be in a better place without AMISOM, without the United States involvement. I think the model that AFRICOM has adapted under General Waldhauser's lead of advised assistance, and when authorized and when appropriate, to accompany African forces on operations is a good tool. To use the uniquely American capabilities to augment African forces, I think is a good role for us.
Well, the panel of U.S. experts also discussed Boko Haram insurgents in northeast Nigeria, as well as political hotspots and U.S. engagement and support in stabilizing affected countries. Now, the surprise ruling by the Kenyan Supreme Court nullifying August presidential election results and ordering a fresh vote on October the 17th initially raised fears of short-term political turmoil in Kenya. The gloves are now off as Kenya's ruling party and the opposition battle for votes ahead of the new election. Voters will again have to choose between President Uhuru Kenyatta, 55, and veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga, 72. Some fear that after a relatively peaceful election campaign, it could open the door to political instability, reviving memories of the violence that followed a disputed 2007 election when more than 1,200 people died. In a discussion in Washington on Tuesday, Ambassador Jenny Fraser, adjunct professor for Africa Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, expressed optimism in Kenya's future and highlighted its importance in the region.
So I think Kenya will continue to be a stable country. It will continue to mature its institutions and its political culture, and the United States can continue to rely on it. The question is, can Kenya rely on the United States? Have we been as strong a partner to Kenya as Kenya has been to us? We actually debated, I think the people in DOD know, whether Kenya should actually send forces to be part of AMISOM at the beginning and whether the United States would support it. The right decision was taken, and we did. How much intelligence sharing are we doing with Kenya in terms of dealing with Al-Shabaab's attacks in their territory? These are the questions of how robust is America's support for Kenya. There's no question about how robust Kenya's support is for the United States.
Thank you very much.
Well, the panelists said Kenya has been a solid anchor for the U.S. in the East Africa, where political stability has allowed refugees from neighboring countries to call Kenya home. Now, the United Nations is urging for more investment in long-term projects to protect people in developing countries from droughts. This comes after a visit by the heads of UN agencies to Ethiopia, where 9.5 million people are in need of food assistance. Ethiopia's Somali region, where rains have failed for the 3rd consecutive year, is experiencing emergency levels of hunger, one level below famine in a 5-point scale used by food agencies. Now, about 2 million animals have died there since the end of last year, crippling herding communities. Eastern and Southern Africa were hit hard last year by drought that wilted crops, slowed economic growth, and drove food prices higher.
One thing is for sure, we got to scale up.
one thing is for sure, we cannot just continue going by a project approach. We have, as not only three of us, the three agencies, what I will call the whole development community has to really look at ways. Obviously, we need to have much more synergy between the different actions. We saw colleagues from different NGOs as well. But globally, we need to scale up.
You have a drought, which means the cattle, the livestock suffer, which means the people suffer, which means there's hunger. That's the issue here. The World Food Program is feeding 3.3 million people on average per day in the Somali region, and it's because of a drought as a result of the change of the climate.
Well, according to the UN, nearly 17 million people across the Horn of Africa need humanitarian aid due to drought, including 2.6 million in Kenya and 3.2 million in Somalia. Well, the Hajj is an annual Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, the most holy city for Muslims, and a mandatory religious duty for Muslims that must be carried out at least once in their lifetime by all adult Muslims who are physically and financially capable of undertaking the journey and can support their family during their absence. Now, the Hajj is the largest annual gathering of people in the world. VOA's Mukbil Yebaro is among the millions who went to the Hajj, and he joins me now in studio to tell us more about his experience. Hajj Mukbil.
How's it going, Vincent?
Good. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
So first, when did you have the mind to go to the Hajj, at least at this particular time?
Initially, I felt as if, it has to come from you. You have to want it, it's a spiritual high like another, honestly. It was a great thing. Had you asked me about a year ago would I think I would have gone? I don't think so. But it kind of just came abruptly. Went with some my family members, my mother, my brother, and my sister. 4 of us embarked on the journey.
Yeah. Now, we get to see images from Mecca over the years. You probably have seen them before. What were your expectations and what did you find there?
Honestly, seeing it for the first time it kind of had me a little bit speechless, honestly. Because I'm one with very many words. I can speak all the time, but I really had no words. A friend of mine actually asked me a couple days later, like, what were your initial thoughts when you were there, when you first, laid eyes on the mosque? I was like, really don't know. I'll have to kind of get back to you on that one.
Yeah. And first, people go to some of these events, the Hajj or any other forms of pilgrimages, because they want to have a certain experience. This is a religious experience.
Yes.
How has it transformed you, at least in the short time? What do you feel as compared to the time before you went there?
I feel like I gained a lot of patience. Patience is key. You have 2 to 3 million people in the same place at the same time. A lot of the norms that we're kind of used to, simple things like using the bathroom whenever you'd like, you have to wait, So just something along those lines. Humility, also seeing how rough it can be, at certain times, certain things that like I said, we were used to, wasn't there, so.
Yeah, and many times people are feared for their lives because you've had tragedies happening there. Was there a time when you were concerned that something like that could happen?
This time I think it might have been a little bit easier. There's a certain portion during the pilgrimage that they kind of thought a few years ago that had occurred initially. This year it was a lot better. They had done some construction on a certain portion that it initially had a 2-way traffic flow where it got really congested, but this year was 1-way traffic. Yeah. It was the easy way out for some people, yeah.
Now, some people always, looking at a young Muslim man, they want to ask one very important question. As an experience, a religious experience, does it make you more tolerant of others, or does it make you become a little more, people worry about radicalization of the young minds of Muslims?
Right. I think it was such a humbling experience just to be around so many different types of Muslims, people from different backgrounds culturally and everything. So it makes you actually more understanding towards humanity. We're all equal, we're all one. Different people might come from different cultures, but we're all of the same faith at that specific time. So just cultural understanding and just being just a better human being in general. And
you had a huge responsibility because you had other family members.
Yes.
Can you mention who else came with you?
Yeah, I was with my mother, my sister, and my brother. So my brother and I's responsibility was to make sure my sister and my mom were okay during the travel.
In fact, you look and sound different than before you went, because I
do
knew you.
that.
Yeah? This has changed you. So what would be your message to other young Muslims and others who may have those kind of ideas?
I would say if you have the financial capability, try to do it when you're young still, because it is physically draining as well.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as people may think it is. You know, it was really hot at the time, so if you can do it when you're young, I'd definitely suggest it.
Hajj Mokbil, thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
joining us
Vincent.
today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, it's a pleasure. Well, that's Mokbil. We want to appreciate very much his sharing his experience with us today. Thank you very much. Now, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, and so check us out and share our show with your friends. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, solutions to minimize the damage caused by floods. Stay with us.
News and notes. This is Living Better.
Karen Shortis is a ballroom dancer today, but she's had a long road to recovery since a horse riding accident in 2000 left her with significant brain injuries. After many months of rehabilitation, she eventually turned to dance in 2013 to further improve her mobility. But she says it wasn't easy.
The first 3 months of my dancing, it was like as if I was taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back.
That was then, but her progress now is plain to see, and she's even enrolled in a dance competition with partner Rob Denton.
It's been quite enlightening. It's to see a change in her balance and her styling starting to come together now.
People with a disability or illness or injury can participate in dance as a therapy and an exercise to improve their self-confidence.
Karen Shortis determined to keep putting her best foot forward. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
One in the southern U.S., Miami, Florida, may have escaped the worst of Hurricane Irma, but in the city's ethnic enclave known as Little Haiti, a low-income community that is home to Haitian, Caribbean, and Latin American members of the African diaspora, residents must now contend with the return to Florida's sweltering heat with little or no power.
In the days since Hurricane Irma's winds battered Miami's Little Haiti, Magdalena Ortiz finds herself crying and shaking in the middle of the night.
When the winds came, it was like a fireman's hose, but with so much force knocking against the trees, like an airplane taking off. It was so strong, so strong.
While others put on a brave face.
I was afraid, but to not make my family nervous, I always have to look strong.
For all the damage that Irma wrought across the Caribbean, Floridians will ultimately remember the hurricane as one that could have been much, much worse. But in Little Haiti, a humid 32 degrees Celsius weekday afternoon with no electricity and no backup generators for 3 days and counting is wearing on an already wary community. Local resident Anthony Bennett says it's unfair that wealthier neighborhoods have begun to see their lights turn on, but not his, even though he pays his electric bill on time.
We all bleed the same, so we feel like if they got lights, we should have lights too. We shouldn't be over here suffering waiting till next week or a week after.
Haitian native Sylvie Lucien wrote a sign asking for assistance.
We have newborn babies and disabled elderly. We're desperate. We need help. We really need help.
For Lucien, like others in her neighborhood, the financial struggle she endures began long before Irma. The passing of a hurricane, she says, reveals a devastating reality. If it were worse, she might not have survived.
You can't go nowhere. We was gonna stay here and die because where can you go with no car, nobody pick you up?
Between cleanups and barbecues, residents of Little Haiti could be seen assisting neighbors while catching an occasional breeze. As long as they continue to wait for help outside, they'll waste no time doing the same for one another. Ramon Taylor, VOA News, Miami.
Well, from the U.S. to South Asia, the news is being dominated by scenes of devastation at historic levels caused by storms and floods. VOA's Elizabeth Lee looks at what urban planners say are solutions to minimize the damage caused by floods in the next time a huge storm hits.
From Houston and Miami to cities in South Asia, 2017 has been a year of devastating floods. A combination of climate change and urban development becomes a perfect storm for catastrophe.
Sea levels are rising. They have risen almost 9 inches in the last century. We're living in a warmer world. We're living in a world where potentially hurricanes could be more damaging.
But climatologist Bill Patzert says rising sea levels contribute to only a small percentage of the storm surge that causes so much flooding.
It has the appearance that flooding due to great storms or during the monsoon season over Asia is becoming more severe. So what's really happening here is that the population of the planet, especially along the great river valleys of Asia, and along the coast, for instance, of the United States, we tend to migrate towards the coast. So there's just more infrastructure, there's more people, there's more damage.
Including damage to homes built near levees and dams, says urban planning expert Kien Go.
It's a symptom of the way that we have not been able to control development and to control where and how developers build.
Architects and urban planners say many cities in potentially flood-prone areas should rethink how they are built and their relationship with water.
Many urban designers have acknowledged that leaving out natural systems is actually a big problem. And the reasons why these cities are flooding is because we have taken away wetlands, we have paved over rivers, we have largely ignore the interaction between physical and natural systems.
One approach to fight floods is what architects call passive design.
Passive approach, which is what effectively nature has done from the beginning, tries to minimize damage, or as the Dutch have discovered, the water will be there, but how do you make it designed in such a way that when it comes and goes, that the recovery is not catastrophic? So passive means, in a lot of ways, less technology and more kind of learning from nature.
For instance, we could design for more parks that for most of the year would be just lovely parkland that you can play with your kids or just visit. And in the once or twice a year events where it does flood, it's fine. It's a field, it'll flood and it'll come back.
Goh says studies show spending money on redesigning and planning a city will show long-term positive results in future rain events. But planners say since local officials determine how a city is built, it will be up to them to decide how to rebuild after a devastating flood and where the money will come from. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Houston.
Well, while U.S. stock indexes continue to see record-breaking gains and U.S. employment numbers are encouraging, American farmers continue to struggle with high costs for fertilizer and seed at a time when demand and prices for their products are low. As viewers Ken Faribault reports, the economic hardship has a ripple effect beyond the farmers' fields.
The annual Farm Progress Show, this year in Decatur, Illinois, is one of the largest farming exhibitions in the world. It's where manufacturers and suppliers show off their latest products and equipment. It's a starting point for farmers researching what big-ticket items are available to make their work in the fields more efficient and easier. But all farmer Jeff Fisher can do at the John Deere exhibit is look.
$250,000 list price for this planter, and this is just a medium-sized planter. I'm interested in a planter a notch below this planter. The commodity prices aren't high enough to be able to afford it.
It's been over 5 years since Fisher's been able to afford new equipment. That was the last time he made a profit.
We're losing money where cost of production is higher than the price of corn on the Chicago Board of Trade and our local price.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture reports median net farm income in 2016 was the lowest since 2009, but projects a modest increase overall for 2017. But the year-over-year hardship for many U.S. farmers has affected more than just the agricultural industry.
The Equipment Manufacturers Association released some pretty dismal numbers for farm equipment sales, and what that means to Caterpillar and Deere, that's troublesome.
Tamara Nelson is the Senior Director of Commodities for the Illinois Farm Bureau. She says a decline in equipment sales affects manufacturing jobs that depend on farmers like Fisher buying new equipment.
If a farmer cannot afford to buy this, then those 25 workers that work to make it, and the steel workers who produce the steel, and all of the people involved in the parts, they are not going to have jobs either. And so farmers need to have good markets, just as manufacturers need to have good markets.
Mark Bremer grows corn and soybeans on his southern Illinois farm and also raises livestock. Like Fisher, he's also getting by using old equipment to make ends meet.
We would love to update, we'd love to purchase new technology and stuff, but that technology comes with a price. They didn't develop it free.
Bremer isn't sure when he'll be able to afford new equipment and is worried about the crop yield this year due to lack of rainfall.
We're not guaranteed the rain, we're not guaranteed the price, we're not guaranteed the yield either, so it's just a continual challenge of making it.
There's also no guarantee next year will be better, but farmer Jeff Fisher still has hope.
We're in the bottom of that roller coaster ride, it feels like right now. I hope it doesn't get worse.
But his roller coaster ride continues in just a few weeks as the next and perhaps most important phase of his work as a farmer begins, harvesting this year's corn and soybeans. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Decatur, Illinois.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a Somali-American model proudly wears her religion. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta opens parliament by warning against divisive and destructive politics amid a boycott by opposition lawmakers. In Ethiopia, the UN is urging more investment in long-term projects to protect people in developing countries from drought. In Libya, looking at the Sabrata area, a main departure point for clandestine migrants hoping to reach Europe, human trafficking gangs are under so much pressure that some have closed for business. In South Africa, former Deputy Minister of Higher Education pleads guilty following the assault of 2 women in Knight's Park in Johannesburg back in August. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Now, Apple has unveiled not 1, but 3 new iPhones. The iPhone 10, iPhone 8, and iPhone 8 Plus join a slew of new products and services from Apple, many of which are set to roll out as early as this Friday. Updated features include a new camera, new hardware components, and new software to support the hardware, as well as augmented reality features. Along with the new iPhone and new phones, Apple announced its first foray into wireless charging, a new facial recognition technology, and a 8K4 Apple TV. Plus, Apple finally added a cellular connection to its new Apple Watch Series 3. Next up, Beverly Hills has seen a drop in the number of visitors from the Middle East this summer. Hot on the heels of President Trump's travel ban on some Muslim-majority countries, foreign visitors coming to the luxury shopping destination began staying away. Many prospective visitors from the Middle East are unsure about what their rights are while traveling. Beverly Hills is now changing the times to learn how to adapt to the shifting marketplace. It has been running its latest tourism campaign called Beverly Hills Open Later or BOLD. Among the changes, shops that used to close at 6 p.m. now stay open until 8 p.m. And in other luxury news, this is no ordinary boarding kennel. It is every pampered piece paradise with water features, plasma TVs and play areas. It offers 262 spacious deluxe suites, penthouses and even counters for dogs, cats and other animals. The Adelaide, Australia facility hopes to generate around $1 million per year for the Guide Dogs South Australia charity. This is their first non-profit pet hotel in the country. Owners who might be suffering separation anxiety can have a video call with their pets. The hotel is called Boo, after the first guide dog, which was trained in Australia back in 1951. And that is what is trending today. Now, Somali-American model Iman was one of the most sought-after fashion models of the 1970s and 1980s. Now, another Somali-American model is making headlines as the first hijab-wearing woman to walk the runway in New York and Italy. Faith Lapidus introduces us to Halima Aden.
Among the young women in last year's Miss Minnesota USA pageant was Halima Aden, who competed in a hijab and a burkini.
I wear the hijab every day, you know, so it's like if I'm going to try something new, I'm going to take that part with me, and it was just a no-brainer.
The Somali-American teen was not crowned Miss Minnesota, but she did win a contract with a major modeling agency, the first hijab-wearing model to sign with a top agency. The world of high fashion is a far cry from the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya, where Aden was born. Before her family left for the United States, she had a diverse group of playmates.
Different people, different refugees from all over Africa came together in Kakuma, yet we still found common ground. The kids, like, we played, all of us, and, you know, we celebrated each other's holidays, if that makes sense. There's not that many opportunities in Kakuma, so when it was Christmas, best believe we're all going to celebrate. And when it's Eid, we all celebrated that too.
She says that's not always the case in the United States. But the hijab is becoming a more familiar sight in American fashion. Nike will launch a breathable mesh hijab next year, and American Eagle Outfitters created a denim hijab with Aden as its main model. Aden was featured on the June cover of Vogue magazine, and in July, she graced the cover of the beauty magazine Allure.
She truly is just like a normal teenage girl, a normal American teenage girl. So I think that for us, again, like our mission being, we want to redefine what beauty standards are. I think she's someone who's so amazingly representative of who we are as America, as a melting pot. It just totally made sense for us.
As Aden enjoys her current success, she remains grateful for the UN efforts in Kakuma. She hopes to return to the camp one day to work with refugee children, to show them they also have the potential to become international stars. I'm Faith Lapidus, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show. Thank you.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Today's episode won't cost you anything.
Freebie.
Let's see what this one is about.
Anna, I love my job.
Oh yeah? Why is that?
I get so many freebies from the bands I write about. CDs, t-shirts, water bottles, even tickets to see them perform.
Wow. The only freebie I ever got from my